The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky plains of Kepler 442b. Colonel Kim Tae-won stood on the observation deck of the human outpost, watching the horizon through his binoculars. The mining facility behind him hummed quietly, its massive extractors pulling precious metals from the planet's crust. 200 human soldiers called this place home. Today, 50,000 alien warriors wanted to take it away. Kim lowered his binoculars and checked his watch. The Vorthak fleet had arrived 3 hours ago. Their ships filled the sky like storm clouds, blocking out the morning light. The aliens had wasted no time setting up their camp. Even from this distance, Kim could see their massive forms moving around their landing zone. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Min-ho called from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vorthak fleet." Kim walked over to the comm station. Park was young, maybe 25, with quick fingers and sharp ears. He had been listening to alien chatter all morning, translating what he could. "Put it through," Kim said. The voice that came through the speakers was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. The alien spoke in Vorthak, but the computer translated the words into human speech. "Attention, tiny humans. I am General Thexmore of the Vorthak Empire. You have built your little nest on our world. You will leave now, or we will remove you." Kim picked up the microphone. "This is Colonel Kim Tae-won, Commanding Officer of Outpost 7. This facility is under the protection of the Human Defense Force. We will not abandon our position." Laughter echoed through the speakers. Not just one voice, but many. The sound made Kim's jaw tighten. "Did you hear that?" Thexmore said to his officers, speaking loud enough for the humans to hear. "The Pinkskins think they can fight us. 200 weaklings against 50,000 Vorthak warriors." More laughter filled the comm channel. Kim could hear other voices in the background, all speaking in Vorthak. Park whispered a translation. "They're calling us toy soldiers, sir, and other things I won't repeat. How many did you count in their landing zone?" Kim asked Captain Cho Hyunwoo, his tactical officer. Cho looked up from his datapad. He was a thin man with careful eyes who never missed a detail. "At least 50,000, sir. Maybe more. Their ships are still unloading." Kim did the math in his head. 250 to 1. Those were not good odds by any measure. Sergeant Lee Soo-yeon walked into the command center. She was small but tough, with steady hands that could wire explosives in the dark. Dirt covered her uniform from checking the perimeter defenses. "Sir, I finished inspecting the outer barriers. Everything's ready, but..." She paused, looking at the tactical display showing enemy positions. "There are so many of them." "Numbers aren't everything," Kim said, though he knew how hollow that sounded. The Vorthak transmission crackled back to life. "You have 1 day to pack your belongings and leave, humans. After that, we will show the galaxy what happens to species that refuse Vorthak generosity." Kim keyed the microphone again. "We're not leaving." "Then you will die for nothing," Thexmore replied. "Your deaths will be broadcast across known space. Let all species see the price of defying the Vorthak Empire." The transmission ended with more alien laughter. Kim looked around the command center. His officers stared back at him, waiting for orders. These were good soldiers, trained and experienced. But they were still human, and humans had limits. "Sir," Corporal Yoon Ji-won spoke from her position near the window. She was their best sniper, with eyes like a hawk and nerves of steel. "I can see their camp through the scope. They're not even trying to hide. No defensive positions, no guards on the perimeter. They think this is going to be easy." "Maybe it will be," muttered Private Nam Seokman. He was the youngest soldier in the outpost, barely 19 years old. His hands shook slightly as he checked his rifle. Staff Sergeant Bae So-young turned to face the boy. She was older than most of the others, with gray hair and scars from previous battles. "Easy for who, Private?" "For them," Seokman said quietly. "Look at the numbers. Look at the size of those aliens. I saw the footage from other battles. Vorthak warriors are 3 meters tall and stronger than 10 humans. Strength isn't everything," Bae said firmly. "I've been fighting for 20 years. I've seen strong enemies before. They all have weaknesses. What weakness could possibly matter against 50,000 of them?" Seokman asked. Bae smiled grimly. "Pride. They think they've already won. That makes them stupid." Kim walked to the tactical display and studied the enemy positions. Cho had marked everything in red: landing zones, troop concentrations, supply areas. The Vorthak had spread out across the plains like they were setting up for a parade, not a battle. They're treating this like a show, Kim said. Look at their formation. No defensive planning. They expect us to sit here and wait to die. Dr. Lim Haywin entered the command center. She served as both the medical officer and their expert on alien biology. Her coat was stained with grease from working on medical equipment. Colonel, I've been reviewing what we know about Vorthak physiology, she said, holding up a data pad. They're incredibly strong, yes, but they have weaknesses too. Poor endurance compared to humans. Their healing factor is slow, and they rely heavily on shock tactics. Overwhelming force in the first assault. What are you thinking, Doctor? Kim asked. I'm thinking that if we can survive their first attack, if we can make this fight last longer than they expect, we might have a chance. Engineer Kang Dong-hyun looked up from his workstation. The defensive systems are operating at full capacity, sir. But I've been working on some modifications that might give us an edge. What kind of modifications? Kim asked. The kind that turn our weaknesses into strengths. Kang replied with a slight smile. Kim nodded. He was starting to see the shape of a plan forming in his mind. It was crazy, probably impossible, but it was better than waiting to die. All right, listen up, Kim said, calling everyone's attention. The Vorthak think they know how this fight will go. They think humans are weak. They think we'll break easily. They think this outpost will fall in a few hours. He paused, looking each of his officers in the eye. They're wrong. Not because we're stronger than them, we're not. Not because we have better weapons, we don't. They're wrong because they don't understand what humans are really capable of when we're cornered. What do you mean, sir? Park asked. I mean that every species in the galaxy knows one thing about humans, Kim said. We don't know when to quit. We don't surrender when the odds are impossible. We find a way to win. Or we make sure our enemies pay such a high price for victory that they regret ever starting the fight. Kim activated the general communication system, sending his voice to every soldier in the outpost. All personnel, this is the Colonel. In 18 hours, the Vorthak will attack this position. They outnumber us 250 to 1. They're bigger, stronger, and better armed than we are. Every tactical manual says we should surrender. He paused, letting that sink in. But we're not here to follow tactical manuals. We're here to show the galaxy what human soldiers can do when everything is on the line. We're going to make these aliens regret the day they decided to mock human courage. Outside, the alien army continued to grow. Their ships landed in waves, disgorging more warriors onto the planet's surface. The sound of their construction echoed across the plains as they built their siege equipment. But inside the human outpost, something else was building. Not fear, though fear was there. Not hope, though hope remained. What was building was the thing that had carried humanity from their home world to the stars. The stubborn refusal to accept defeat, no matter what the odds. The Vorthak had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that mockery would break human spirit. Instead, it had awakened something far more dangerous. It had awakened human pride. The second day brought new horrors and new hope in equal measure. Colonel Kim Tae-won stood in the command center, reading the latest intelligence reports. The Vorthak army had grown during the night. More ships had arrived, bringing the enemy force to nearly 60,000 warriors. Sir, Lieutenant Park Min-ho called from his station. General Thexmore is broadcasting again. He wants all frequencies open so every human ship in the system can hear. Kim nodded. Put it through. The alien general's voice filled the room, translated by the computer into cold, mechanical words. Humans of the dying outpost, your time grows short. But before you perish, let me educate you about your place in the galaxy. Kim exchanged glances with Captain Cho Hyun-woo. The alien was giving a speech, not demanding surrender. That was interesting. Humanity calls itself a warrior species, Thexmore continued. But where are your victories? The Centauri colonies fell to us in 3 days. The research station at Wolf 359 surrendered without firing a shot. Your species talks of courage, but you run when real warriors arrive. Dr. Lim Haywin entered the command center, carrying a data pad filled with biological readings. She had been studying Vorthak physiology all night, looking for anything that might help. Colonel, she whispered, I've found something important. Kim held up a hand as Thexmore's broadcast continued. Today, the galaxy will watch as the Vorthak Empire destroys another human delusion. Your small outpost will burn and every species will learn the price of defying us. Humanity's weakness will be displayed for all to see. The transmission ended with what sounded like cheering from the alien camp. "Doctor, what did you find?" Kim asked. Lim activated her datapad, showing biological charts and medical readings. "I analyzed footage from previous Vorthak battles. Their warriors are incredibly strong for short periods, but they tire quickly. After 30 minutes of intense activity, their performance drops by 40%. 30 minutes? Captain Cho leaned forward. "That's not much time." "No, but it's something," Lim continued. "More importantly, they heal slowly compared to humans. A wound that would disable a human for an hour might keep a Vorthak out of action for a full day." Sergeant Lee Soo-hyun looked up from her explosive calculations. "So if we can make them bleed early and make the fight last longer than they expect?" "They'll start to weaken while we stay strong," Kim finished. "It's not much, but it's a start." Engineer Kang Dong-hyun approached with a tired smile. He had been working all night on his modifications to the defense systems. "Colonel, I think I have something that will help." "Show me," Kim said. Kang led them to his workstation where holographic displays showed the outpost's defensive grid. "I've been analyzing Vorthak technology. They use brute force approaches to everything. Overwhelming firepower, direct assaults, simple tactics. And their equipment isn't designed to handle rapid changes or complex interference patterns." Kang highlighted several areas on the display. "I can modify our defensive systems to create electromagnetic chaos. Not enough to stop them, but enough to disrupt their coordination." Staff Sergeant Bae So-young had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. "There's something else. I've been watching their camp through the scopes. They're celebrating already, drinking, singing victory songs. They think this battle is over before it starts." Corporal Yoon Ji-won nodded from her sniper position. "I can confirm that. No sentries, no defensive positions. They're acting like they're at a festival, not preparing for war." Private Nam Seokmin, who had seemed so frightened the day before, now looked thoughtful. "Maybe that's good for us." "How do you figure?" Kim asked. The young soldier struggled to find the right words. "Well, if they think we're already beaten, they won't prepare for a real fight. They'll expect us to break quickly. But we won't break," Bae said firmly. "That's not what humans do." Kim activated the tactical display showing the enemy positions around the outpost. Red markers indicated Vorthak units, supply depots, and command posts. There were so many red markers that they almost covered the screen. "All right," Kim said. "They want to give the galaxy a show. Let's make sure it's not the show they're expecting." He turned to his officers. "Kang, how long do you need to complete your modifications?" 6 hours, sir." "Soo-hyun, what's our explosive situation?" The demolitions expert consulted her notes. "Enough to make things interesting, sir. I've been placing charges at key defensive points. If they want to take this outpost, they'll have to work for every meter." "Jiwon, sightlines?" The sniper smiled grimly. "Clear shots to their command area, sir. I count at least 20 high-value targets." "Dr. Lim, medical preparations?" "All ready, Colonel. I've prepared stimulants designed for human physiology. They'll help with endurance and pain management during extended combat." Kim nodded. The pieces were coming together, but they were still vastly outnumbered. He needed something more, something that would turn their desperate situation into an advantage. "Park, are you still monitoring their communications?" "Yes, sir. They're not even encrypting most of their messages. They don't think we're a threat worth hiding from." "What are they saying?" Park consulted his translation notes, mostly boasting about how quickly they'll finish us. "But sir, there's something else. They've invited war correspondents from across the galaxy to record the battle." "War correspondents?" "Yes, sir. Representatives from at least a dozen species. They want to broadcast our defeat live across known space." Kim was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "That's perfect," he said, "sir." Cho looked confused. "Don't you see? They're so confident of victory that they've invited witnesses. Reporters from every major species in the galaxy will be watching this fight." "I don't understand how that helps us," Soo-hyun said. "Because now we're not just fighting for this outpost," Kim explained. "We're fighting for humanity's reputation. Every species in the galaxy is going to watch this battle. They'll see what happens when someone underestimates human soldiers." He activated the general communication system again. "All personnel, this is the Colonel. I want you to understand what's happening here. In a few hours, the Vorthak will attack our position. They've invited reporters from across the galaxy to watch us die. They want to use our defeat as a warning to other species." Kim paused, looking around at his officers. but we're going to give them a different kind of show. We're going to show the galaxy why you never, ever underestimate a human being who's been backed into a corner. Outside, the alien preparations continued. Massive siege engines rolled into position. Warriors practiced their battle cries. Supply lines stretched back to the landing zone, carrying ammunition and equipment for what they assumed would be a short, brutal fight, but inside the human outpost, preparations of a different kind were taking place. Kang worked feverishly on his defensive modifications. Soo-hyun checked and rechecked her explosive charges. Ji-won cleaned her rifle with the careful attention of someone who knew every shot would count. And in the medical bay, Dr. Lim prepared not just for treating wounded, but for keeping human soldiers fighting longer than their alien enemies thought possible. "Sir?" Park called out. "I'm picking up another transmission. It's not from the Vorthak. Who's it from?" "Unknown source, but it's using human encryption." "Wait." Park's fingers flew over his console. "Sir, it's from the defense fleet. They're 18 hours out." Kim felt a moment of hope, then reality set in. 18 hours? "Yes, sir." Kim looked at the tactical display. The Vorthak attack would begin in 6 hours. The cavalry was coming, but it would arrive far too late. "Well," Kim said quietly, "I guess we'll just have to hold out until they get here." 18 hours, sir?" Sockman's voice was small. 18 hours, Kim confirmed. "Think you can keep fighting that long, Private?" The young soldier straightened his shoulders. "Yes, sir, if that's what it takes," Kim smiled. The boy was learning what it meant to be human. Not the strongest species in the galaxy, not the fastest or the smartest, but definitely the most stubborn. The enemy had made their biggest mistake. They thought human spirit could be broken with overwhelming force. They were about to learn otherwise. The final night arrived with unexpected quiet. Colonel Kim Tae-won walked the perimeter of the outpost, checking on his soldiers one last time before the storm broke. Above him, 3 moons cast silver light across the rocky landscape. In a few hours, that same light would illuminate the largest battle this world had ever seen. The Vorthak camp sprawled across the plains like a small city. Their fires burned bright against the darkness, and the sound of their celebration carried on the wind. They sang victory songs and shared stories of previous conquests. To them, tomorrow was not a battle but a celebration of their strength. "Colonel," Corporal Han Jasu approached from the shadows. She led the reconnaissance team and had been watching the enemy all day. "I have a report from our observation post. What did you see?" "They brought more than soldiers, sir. There are news crews from at least 8 different species. They've set up broadcasting equipment on a hill overlooking the battlefield." Kim stopped walking. "Broadcasting equipment?" "Yes, sir. Professional grade. They plan to stream this battle live across the galaxy." Han paused. "Sir, there are millions of beings who will watch us die tomorrow." Kim considered this. Every species in known space would see this fight. They would see 200 human soldiers face 60,000 Vorthak warriors. Most would expect the humans to break quickly, to surrender or run when faced with impossible odds. "Good," Kim said finally. Han looked surprised. "Sir, it's good that they'll be watching. Let them see what humans are really made of." They continued walking the perimeter. At each defensive position, soldiers worked quietly in the moonlight. Some cleaned weapons, others checked equipment, but most simply waited with the patience that came from accepting what could not be changed. At the north wall, Kim found Sergeant Lee Soo-hyun making final adjustments to her explosive charges. Her small hands moved with practiced precision, setting timers and connecting detonators. "How are we looking, Sergeant?" "Ready to make some noise, sir?" she replied without looking up. "I've got charges at every critical point. When they come, they'll pay for every meter." "Good. Get some rest when you're finished." Soo-hyun finally looked up, her face dirty but determined. "With respect, sir, I'll rest when this is over." In the command center, engineer Kang Dong-yun put the finishing touches on his defensive modifications. Screens showed power levels and system status throughout the outpost. Everything glowed green, ready for action. "How are the modifications working?" Kim asked. "Better than I hoped, sir," Kang replied. "When they attack, their communications will be a mess. Their coordination will break down within minutes." "Will it be enough?" Kang was quiet for a moment. "It will help, sir. The rest is up to us." Captain Cho Hyun-woo worked at the tactical station, updating battle plans and contingencies. He had prepared for every scenario he could imagine. But they all came down to the same thing, holding out longer than anyone thought possible. "Sir," Cho said as Kim approached, "I've been thinking about their strategy, and they're planning a traditional Vorthak assault. Overwhelming force, direct attack, maximum intimidation. They expect us to break in the first hour." "But we won't break," Kim said. "No, sir, we won't. But when we don't break, when we keep fighting past their timeline, they'll start to doubt themselves. Doubt leads to mistakes." At the medical station, Dr. Lim Haewon prepared for the wounded that would surely come. She had everything ready: surgical equipment, pain medication, and the special stimulants designed to keep human soldiers fighting longer than should be possible. "Doctor," Kim said, "are you ready for tomorrow?" "As ready as anyone can be for what's coming," she replied. "Colonel, I want you to know that I've studied every major battle in human history. We've always found ways to win when everyone said we couldn't. What makes you think tomorrow will be different?" "I don't think it will be different," Lim said with a slight smile. "I think tomorrow will be exactly what humans do best: the impossible." Kim made his way to the communications station where Lieutenant Park Min-ho monitored alien chatter. The young officer had been listening to enemy communications for days, translating their growing confidence into useful intelligence. "What are they saying tonight?" Kim asked. "More of the same, sir, posting about how quickly they'll finish us. But sir, I think I've found something useful." "Tell me." "They're planning to broadcast the battle live, but they've already written the news reports. I intercepted their prepared statements about crushing human resistance and destroying our delusions of strength." Kim almost smiled. "They've written our obituary before we're dead?" "Yes, sir. They're that confident." "Good. Confidence makes you careless." Kim climbed to the observation deck where Corporal Yoon Ji-won maintained her sniper position. She lay motionless behind her rifle, watching the enemy camp through her scope. "Anything interesting out there?" "They're getting drunk, sir," Ji-won replied without moving. "Their sentries are asleep. Their officers are celebrating. They think tomorrow is a party. Can you hit their command structure when the fighting starts?" "Yes, sir. I've marked 17 priority targets. When you give the word, their coordination goes to pieces." Kim nodded. "Rest when you can, Corporal. Tomorrow will test all of us." In the barracks, soldiers prepared in their own ways. Staff Sergeant Bae So-young told stories of previous battles to the younger soldiers, reminding them that humans had always found ways to overcome impossible odds. Private Nam Seokman, who had been so afraid just days before, now checked his equipment with calm precision. The fear was still there, but it was controlled, focused into something useful. "How are you feeling, Private?" Kim asked. "Ready, sir," Seokman replied. "I keep thinking about what Sergeant Bae said, about how humans don't know when to quit. What do you think about that?" "I think maybe not knowing when to quit is the same thing as knowing when to stand up." Kim was impressed. The boy was learning. As the night wore on, Kim found himself back in the command center, looking at the tactical display one final time. Red markers showed enemy positions surrounding the outpost. 60,000 warriors against 200. By every military calculation, the humans would last less than an hour. But military calculations didn't account for the human factor. They didn't measure stubbornness or pride or the simple refusal to accept defeat. They didn't calculate the power of humans who knew they were being watched by the entire galaxy. Technician Oh Yun-hee approached with a data pad. "Sir, I've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. Species everywhere are talking about tomorrow's battle." "What are they saying?" "Most expect us to surrender quickly. Some are taking bets on how long we'll last. The longest estimate is 2 hours. 2 hours? Kim almost laughed. "That's not very flattering." "No, sir. But sir, there are some who think differently. Some who remember human history. They're saying that humans always fight longest when the odds are worst." Kim activated the general communication system one final time. "All personnel, this is your colonel. In 3 hours, the Vorthak will attack our position. They expect us to break quickly. They expect us to run or surrender when faced with overwhelming force." His voice carried to every corner of the outpost, reaching every human soldier, preparing for the fight of their lives. "They're wrong, not because we're stronger than them, but because we understand something they don't. We know that strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about how long you can keep standing after you've been hit." Kim paused, looking out at the enemy camp where fires burned bright with premature celebration. "Tomorrow, the galaxy will watch as 200 human soldiers face 60,000 alien warriors. They expect to see us crushed. Instead, they're going to see something that will echo across known space for generations. They're going to see humans stand up. Outside, the enemy camp continued its celebration, confident in their coming victory. War correspondents tested their equipment, preparing to broadcast what they assumed would be a quick demonstration of Vorthak superiority. But inside the human outpost, 200 soldiers made their final preparations, with the quiet determination of people who had already decided that losing was not an option. They would fight until they couldn't fight anymore, and then they would fight some more. The Vorthak had superior numbers, superior weapons, and superior physical strength. But they lacked the one thing that had carried humanity from caves to stars. They lacked the stubborn human refusal to know when they were beaten. Dawn was coming, and with it, the galaxy would learn what that refusal could accomplish. Dawn broke over Kepler 442b with the sound of 60,000 voices raised in a war cry that shook the ground. Colonel Kim Tae-won stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as red markers surged toward their position like a digital tsunami. The Vorthak assault had begun. All stations report status, Kim said into his microphone. Responses came back from every position. 200 human soldiers were ready to face the impossible. Outside, the alien army moved across the plains like a living mountain. Their warriors stood 3 meters tall, armed with energy weapons that could punch through steel. Their battle cries echoed off the hills as they charged toward the small human outpost. War correspondents from across the galaxy trained their cameras on the approaching horde. Millions of beings watched their screens, waiting to see the swift destruction of human resistance. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Min-ho called from communications, "General Thexmore is broadcasting on all frequencies. He wants everyone to hear this." The alien general's voice filled the command center, translated into cold, mechanical words. "Behold the end of human delusion. Watch as the Vorthak Empire crushes these weak creatures who dare to resist us. Let this be a lesson to all species. There is no defense against Vorthak might." The ground shook as the alien army drew closer. Through the windows, Kim could see the front ranks of Vorthak warriors, their massive forms silhouetted against the rising sun. "Steady," Kim said into the general communications. "Wait for my signal." The first hour went exactly as the Vorthak expected. Their overwhelming assault crashed against the human defenses like a hammer striking an anvil. Energy weapons lit up the morning sky. Explosions rocked the outpost walls. The sound of battle filled the air with thunder and smoke. Through it all, the humans held their positions and returned fire. They gave ground slowly, making the aliens pay for every meter, but they were clearly being overwhelmed. War correspondents spoke excitedly into their cameras about the swift Vorthak victory unfolding before their eyes. General Thexmore appeared on several broadcasts, his massive form impressive against the battle backdrop. "See how the humans cower behind their walls," he declared. "Their resistance crumbles like dry leaves before the Vorthak storm." But Kim was watching his chronometer. 58 minutes, 59, 60, 1 hour exactly. "Now," Kim said quietly into his microphone. Sergeant Lee Soo-hyun pressed the first detonator. The explosion that followed was not random. Soo-hyun had spent days calculating exactly where to place her charges for maximum psychological impact. The blast collapsed a section of the Vorthak advance route, channeling thousands of warriors into a narrow kill zone where human weapons could be most effective. But more importantly, it announced to the galaxy that the humans were not broken. They were not cowering. They were fighting back. "Phase 2, Kim ordered. Corporal Yoon Ji-won had been waiting for this moment. Her rifle spoke once, twice, 3 times. 3 Vorthak commanders fell with precision shots to the head. Their subordinates looked around in confusion as their chain of command suddenly shattered. Engineer Kang Dong-hyun activated his defensive modifications. Electromagnetic chaos erupted across the battlefield as Vorthak communication systems failed. Orders could not be transmitted. Units lost contact with their commanders. The coordinated assault began to break apart into confused individual attacks. Captain Cho Hyun-woo watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. "Sir, their formation is collapsing. They're losing coordination." "Good. Let them taste confusion." War correspondents found themselves reporting something unexpected. The swift human collapse they had been promised was not happening. Instead, they watched as the supposedly weak humans adapted and struck back with precision and timing, that caught the Vorthak completely off guard. Private Nam Seokman, fighting at the North Wall, discovered something about himself in that moment. The fear was still there, but it was overwhelmed by something stronger. The determination to prove that humans did not break easily. Sergeant Bay, he called to Staff Sergeant Bay Soyoung. "They're pulling back." "Not pulling back," Bay replied, firing another burst at the retreating aliens. "Regrouping. They didn't expect us to hurt them this badly." She was right. The Vorthak had expected swift victory, not a grinding fight that cost them hundreds of warriors in the first hour. They fell back to regroup, giving the humans precious time to reload and reposition. Dr. Lim Haewon moved through the outpost, treating wounded soldiers with quick efficiency. Her stimulants worked exactly as designed, keeping humans fighting when exhaustion should have claimed them. "How are we doing, Doctor?" Kim asked during a brief lull in the fighting. "Better than expected," she replied, working on a soldier with a plasma burn. "The Vorthak are tiring faster than we are. Their wounds are healing slowly. We're outlasting them." "But sir," Corporal Han Jisu reported from the observation post, "they're bringing up heavy weapons, really heavy weapons." Kim looked through his binoculars at the alien lines. Massive artillery pieces were rolling into position, weapons designed to level buildings, not fight infantry. They're getting frustrated, Kim realized. This isn't going the way they planned. The second assault came 2 hours later with twice the firepower but half the coordination. The Vorthak had superior weapons, but they were using them like angry children breaking toys rather than professional soldiers fighting a battle. Human defenders moved like shadows, appearing to strike and disappearing before retaliation could find them. Ji-won and her sniper teams picked off officers and communications personnel, keeping the enemy confused and leaderless. Soo-hyun's explosives continued to channel alien forces into kill zones where human weapons could do the most damage. Each blast was precisely timed and perfectly placed. By the 4th hour, something unprecedented began to happen. The Vorthak assault stalled completely. "Sir," Park reported from communications, "I'm intercepting frantic messages from their command. They're asking for reinforcements." "Reinforcements?" Kim almost smiled. "They brought 60,000 warriors to fight 200 humans and now they want more troops?" The war correspondents were reporting a very different story now. Instead of swift Vorthak victory, they described fierce human resistance that had bloodied the nose of the galaxy's most feared army. Some reporters had stopped talking about human weakness entirely. They spoke instead of tactical brilliance, stubborn courage, and the shocking sight of Vorthak warriors retreating from a human position. "Colonel," Technician Oh Yoon-hee called from her monitoring station, "communications are going crazy across the galaxy. Everyone's watching this battle. I'm seeing reactions from dozens of species." "What kind of reactions?" "Surprise, sir, shock. Some species are asking how 200 humans are holding off 60,000 Vorthak. Others are wondering if they underestimated human military capability." Kim felt a grim satisfaction. This was bigger than just one outpost now. This battle was changing how the galaxy saw humanity. By the 6th hour, the impossible was happening. The Vorthak were not just stalled. They were being pushed back. Human forces, fighting with desperate precision, had turned defense into counterattack. "Sir," Captain Cho reported, "their supply lines are overextended. They planned for a quick victory, not a prolonged siege. And they're running low on ammunition. Their heavy weapons are firing less frequently." Kim activated the general communications. "All units, this is the colonel. We've been fighting for 6 hours. The enemy expected us to break in 1 hour. They're confused, they're tired, and they're running out of supplies." He paused, watching the tactical display where red markers were actually retreating from some positions. "But we're not tired, we're not confused, and we're definitely not out of fight. Show them what happens when they underestimate human soldiers." The response was immediate. Human forces pressed their advantage with renewed vigor. What had started as desperate defense became aggressive assault. Sergeant Bay led a squad that broke through Vorthak lines and destroyed an artillery position. "Look at them run!" she called over the comm system. "The mighty Vorthak warriors are running from humans." It was true. For the first time in their military history, Vorthak forces were retreating from an inferior enemy, not because they were outgunned or outnumbered, but because they had been outfought by soldiers who simply refused to accept defeat. General Thexmore appeared on fewer broadcasts now. When he did speak, his voice carried anger instead of confidence. "Temporary setback," he declared. "The humans have used cowardly tricks, but Vorthak's strength will prevail." But everyone watching could see the truth. The tricks were not cowardly, they were brilliant. And Vorthak's strength had already failed against human determination. By the 8th hour, the unthinkable had happened. 200 human soldiers had not just survived the assault of 60,000 aliens, they were winning. War correspondents struggled to explain what they were seeing. Military analysts across the galaxy began urgent reviews of human capabilities. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak now watched in stunned silence as the impossible unfolded before their eyes. The mighty Vorthak Empire, conqueror of dozens of worlds, was being humbled by a handful of stubborn humans who had simply refused to know when they were beaten. And the galaxy was watching every moment of it. The third day of battle dawned on a changed galaxy. What had begun as the Vorthak Empire's demonstration of strength had become something else entirely, a lesson in why species across known space should never underestimate human determination. Colonel Kim, Taewon stood on the observation deck, looking out at a battlefield that told an impossible story. Vorthak equipment lay scattered across the plains. Their neat military formations had devolved into desperate clusters of confused warriors. Supply lines stretched thin and broken back to landing zones that were no longer secure. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Min-ho called from communications, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Everyone wants to know how we did it." Kim smiled grimly. "Tell them we just did what humans do. We stood up." The numbers told a story that military analysts would study for decades. 200 human soldiers had held their position against 60,000 Vorthak warriors for 72 hours. More than that, they had inflicted devastating casualties while losing only 67 of their own. But the real victory was not measured in casualties or territory. It was measured in the changed tone of galactic communications. Species that had been considering Vorthak demands now spoke of resistance. Worlds that had been preparing to surrender now asked questions about human military advisors. "Colonel," Captain Cho Hyunwoo reported from the tactical station, "long-range sensors show the Vorthak preparing to retreat. Their heavy equipment is being loaded back onto ships." "Retreat?" Kim almost couldn't believe it. "They're actually retreating?" "Yes, sir. After 3 days of fighting, they're giving up." Staff Sergeant Bae So-young approached with a bandaged arm and a fierce grin. "Sir, our forward scouts report that General Thexmore is no longer in command. He's been relieved by his own officers." Kim shook his head in amazement. The alien general who had mocked human weakness had been removed from command because he could not defeat 200 human soldiers with 60,000 warriors, Dr. Lim Hae-won worked in the medical bay, treating the last of the wounded. Her predictions about human endurance had proven accurate beyond even her hopes. Human soldiers had fought for 3 days straight, adapting and improvising while their alien enemies grew increasingly exhausted and demoralized. "Doctor," Kim said as he checked on the casualties, "your stimulants worked perfectly. Our soldiers outlasted aliens 3 times their size." "It wasn't just the stimulants, Colonel," she replied. "It was human physiology. We're built for endurance. We heal faster than they do. We adapt quicker. We don't give up when things get difficult." Engineer Kang Dong-hyun monitored the retreating alien forces through the outpost's sensors. His defensive modifications had worked better than anyone had dared hope, keeping Vorthak forces confused and uncoordinated throughout the battle. "Sir," he reported, "their retreat is turning into a rout. They're abandoning equipment rather than taking time to load it properly." Sergeant Lee Soo-hyun emerged from the tunnels where she had been placing her final charges. Her explosives had turned the tide of battle more than once, channeling enemy forces into kill zones and breaking up every major assault. "Colonel, should I detonate the charges along their retreat route?" Kim considered this. It would be easy to inflict more casualties on the fleeing aliens, but the battle was won and humanity had made its point. "No, Sergeant. Let them go. But let them carry the story of this fight back to their empire." Corporal Yoon Ji-won climbed down from her sniper position, her rifle still warm from 3 days of precise shooting. She had eliminated dozens of enemy officers, disrupting Vorthak command structure at crucial moments. "Sir, I count 43 confirmed kills, all command personnel. Their chain of command never recovered from the first day. Private Nam Seokmin, who had begun this battle as a frightened boy, now carried himself like a veteran. 3 days of combat had taught him what it meant to be human in a galaxy that respected only strength. "Sir," he said, "the war correspondents are asking for interviews. They want to know how we did it." Kim looked around at his soldiers. They were tired, dirty, and wounded, but they stood tall. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious not through superior firepower or numbers, but through the simple human refusal to accept defeat. "Tell the correspondents they can have their interviews," Kim said. "But make sure they understand one thing: this wasn't a miracle. This was just humans being human." Technician Oh Yun-hee monitored galactic communications, watching as news of the battle spread across known space. The reactions were everything Kim had hoped for and more. "Sir, preliminary reports show that 17 different species have refused Vorthak ultimatums in the last 6 hours. They're all citing the Battle of Kepler 442b as proof that the Vorthak can be beaten." Kim felt a deep satisfaction. The victory here had accomplished more than saving one outpost. It had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. What else are they saying? Military academies across 6 systems are requesting human tactical manuals. 3 species want to hire human military advisors. And sir, the Centauri colonies that surrendered to the Vorthak last year are talking about rebellion. The implications were staggering. One small battle had shifted the perception of humanity from weak refugees to formidable allies. The Vorthak Empire's reputation for invincibility lay in ruins on the plains of Kepler 442b. As the alien ships lifted off in retreat, carrying news of their defeat across the galaxy, Kim received a transmission from Earth Command. "Outstanding work. Colonel?" Admiral Chen's voice came through clearly. "The defense fleet is still 6 hours out, but it looks like you won't need us after all." "Thank you, Admiral. We held the line. You did more than that. Early reports suggest this battle has changed everything. Species across the galaxy are reassessing human capabilities. Some are asking about military alliances." Kim looked out at his soldiers as they began the work of cleaning up after 3 days of impossible victory. They moved with quiet pride, not boasting about their achievement but satisfied with work well done. "Admiral, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. We didn't win this battle with superior technology or overwhelming force. We won it by being stubborn, by refusing to quit when anyone else would have given up. Is there a point to this observation, Colonel?" "Yes, sir. If the galaxy wants to understand human military capabilities, they need to understand that we don't fight like other species. We don't rely on intimidation or superior numbers. We fight with the knowledge that humans never know when to quit." The transmission from Earth Command ended with orders to hold position and await the arrival of reinforcement fleets. But Kim knew the real reinforcements had already arrived. They came in the form of changed perceptions across the galaxy. Corporal Han Jisoo returned from her final reconnaissance mission with a report that brought smiles to exhausted faces. "Sir, the Vorthak left behind significant equipment and supplies. Apparently they were in too much of a hurry to retreat properly." "What kind of equipment?" "Artillery pieces, vehicles, communications gear. Enough to outfit several human battalions." Kim almost laughed. The aliens had been so eager to escape that they had left behind the tools of war. It was a final insult to their reputation, and a useful gift to human forces. As the day wore on, reports continued to arrive from across known space. The Battle of Kepler 442b was being called the turning point in galactic politics. The age of Vorthak intimidation was ending, replaced by something new: the age of human stubbornness. War correspondents filed their final reports, struggling to explain how 200 humans had accomplished what entire fleets could not. Military analysts began urgent studies of human tactics and psychology. Diplomats opened communications with Earth, seeking agreements and alliances. But on Kepler 442b, the soldiers who had made it all possible went about their duties with characteristic human practicality. They had work to do, weapons to clean, equipment to repair, positions to secure. "Sir," Park reported from communications, "I'm receiving a message from the Vorthak fleet. It's from their new commander. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was different from General Thexmore's arrogant tones. This alien spoke with the careful respect of someone who had learned a hard lesson. "Human soldiers of Outpost 7, this is Commander Vektal of the Vorthak fleet. We acknowledge your victory. You have proven that humans are not the weak species we believe them to be." Kim picked up the microphone. "This is Colonel Kim Taewon. Message received, Commander. Colonel, my superiors will want to know how you achieved this victory. What should I tell them? Kim looked around at his soldiers. Tired, dirty, but unbroken. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious through nothing more than human determination. Tell them, Kim said into the microphone, that they made one critical mistake. They thought mockery would break human spirit. Instead, it woke something up. What did it wake up? Human pride, Commander. And once you wake that up, it's very difficult to put back to sleep. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, species watched and learned and reassessed their understanding of humanity. The small, weak humans had stood up to the mighty Vorthak Empire and won. The enemy had mocked a tiny force, confident in their overwhelming superiority. But they had learned too late that humans measure strength differently than other species.